So you want to know what is going to happen with home prices now that we are out of the selling season and the summer? Well, knowing that the back half of the year, a lot of people are talking about these interesting interest rates in this jam-packed August edition of Keeping Current Matters, I will unpack all of that and some, so that way, as always, you can make educated decisions knowing that people do things for their own reasons, and we want to make sure whatever your reason is, we can help you with that decision making. Now, the challenge is, as you look at what is happening in the housing market, is in times of uncertainty, people follow the certain. And that's what we want to be for you, as the headlines have continued to do more harm or hurt than any level of help and or education. And so when you look at if you're confused, well, don't worry. A lot of other people are confused, and it becomes very easy to be uncertain about your decision. And the downside to that, though, is that's where opportunity exists. As you look at the housing market and the consumer survey on home prices, I want to come to you from the heart of a teacher, as always, never that of a salesperson. But what we do have to understand is how headlines sell certain ideas to get us to either start considering or potentially changing our perspectives. And the reality is the consumer confidence in home prices weakened towards the end of 2022. And for a lot of people, as you can see, all the way going back to 2010, that was at a heightened level that we had not experienced around the confidence in home prices. Now, the downside to that, though, is where did you get that confidence? And for most people, they got it from headlines. As you can see here, December 7th, a 20% home price decline. 7 forecast models are leaning towards a crash. Here's where the other 13 models have the 2023 housing market going. Well, does anybody call the media a liar? Because as you also look at this consumer confidence in home prices, this was the percentage of who believe home prices will go down. Look at again in the height of the pandemic, what people thought, the talk of a repeat crash of 2008, because we went through a correction last year. But remember, a correction does not mean crash, nor does it even mean that home prices are going to go down. What it is correcting the rate at which something is already doing and or performing. And in our case, housing, the crazy appreciation that we were seeing that needed to be corrected. So as you look at now, though, 1 out of 4 people still believe prices will depreciate. And the challenge with that is it is going down as of June's forecast. But the problem is when you look at the experts, there's zero forecast that anybody is saying that they will. So the challenge that we're looking at is when you're sitting around your Thanksgiving table and there's 10 people there, the truth is that 2 to 3 people are going to tell you that you're making a bad decision. People might say you shouldn't sell. But as we start looking at some of the interesting opportunity that presents itself with highly estimated forecasts of the future, I'm going to give you a couple reasons on why right now is a very good time to be buying and selling. And there are a lot of people who have already taken advantage of opportunities, just as much as I'm going to share with you the advantages of those who bought last July when home prices depreciated and they are now recovering in the value of their current homes. So facts shatter fear, and that's what we want to stick with today. But I don't just want to give you the facts. I want to help people identify the truth. And the truth is that most headlines, most media is going to continue to portray the wrong consideration to the general public. Because as you look at the last 30 to 40 years of what has happened historically through real estate, any person who's been in it long term has found success. So people would panic and put their home on the market was a first fear that people started lingering around this time last year. So as you look at Bill McBride, as inventory picked up sharply in 2022, I adjusted my outlook in October 2022 and wrote house prices 7 years in purgatory. I noted that a 10% decline in nominal prices now seemed likely. However, the inventory surge in 2022 was somewhat of a head fake. Some potential sellers quickly listed their homes, probably remembering what happened. And for a lot of you who saw this in your neighborhood last year, you saw people dramatically drop their prices just to get homes sold. And then you saw another group of people who saw that opportunity last year and took their home off the market, waited, and then took advantage of how great the market was the first half of this year. Now, as you can see, why this is so important is we need to look at context. In this slide where new listings were expected to skyrocket, yes, come April, May, June, and July, you can see in comparison to a normalized market, 17, 18, 19, that the projections were that this inventory and all these new listings were going to keep coming to the market. And because demand had softened so much halfway through the year last year, that's where that fear mongering of all these people putting their homes on the market was coming from. But the problem is you have to start listing every single month to the market updates to see this is what really happened. They plummeted and new listings dramatically dropped instead of continuing to rise, which is where all those headlines again hurt, because a lot of people could have taken their homes off the market, waited it out versus having to sell at a discounted price, and it corrected quite fast, which you know that most corrections happen in less than 6 months because they are a part of correcting a trend, not any indicators of a crash. People are also saying, oh my gosh, there's going to be a recession coming at the end of the moratorium. If you guys remember what that is, and some of you might not, when we were in COVID, there were a lot of regulations set up that said, hey, you cannot evict people. We need to help people make their mortgage payments. We need to slow this process down while people are going through some economic and financial struggles. And so guess what? Did that happen? Absolutely not. Foreclosures in the first 6 months, as you look at 2023, they only dramatically reduced. People were committed to their homes and meant something even more to them after the pandemic. But here's the scary part. As you can see, they actually hit a historical low. The foreclosures in 2021 were only 65,000. Now, here's the problem. If you remember, the moratorium said that you can't evict people. So the foreclosure made it very, very difficult. And as you looked at the assistance that banks were providing, of course, that number was going to be historically low. But here's the problem. In the last 2 years, you're going to see headlines say foreclosures are up 100%. But yes, look at where they're at in 2023 compared to 2022. And as you look at this number, really around 2015, 2016, 2017, about 500,000 foreclosures is a healthy. We would never want anybody to foreclose on a home, but we do need inventory. And a normal process is that bad things happen and people need to foreclose on their property. And we have a process for that. And hopefully there's many people in those people's lives that are helping them, but do understand that this is normal for people to experience. And what's not normal is the amount of lack of foreclosures we're seeing, which again goes to show how strong the housing market is. They also said, oh my gosh, all these people are not going to make their payments on their mortgages. And so delinquencies, the percentage of mortgage loans that are 3 monthly payments or more past due, as you can see, are again much lower than where they were coming out of the pandemic, which was a fear that people had that they would not be able to. And as we know, the economy has done very well, which is why we're in this high interest rate market. So let's also look at May's overall mortgage delinquency rate matched the all-time low, and serious delinquencies followed suit. Furthermore, the rate of mortgages that were 6 months or more past due, a measure that ballooned in 2021, has receded to a level last observed in March of 2020. So again, all of these are just to share when you see headlines say that there is a rise in these areas, that is normal because that's the correction we need to see. It's not that there's going to be any negative impact. If anything, it will be positive if we can get some inventory to come to the market, which is something that's heavily needed. Bill McBride is the gentleman who predicted the 2008 crash. And so as you look at what he predicted last week, and let's just go back to November 2008, foreclosure activity is already at record levels yet. As prices fall, foreclosure activity will probably continue to increase. The activity will be literally off the chart. That is what he said. Last week, he said there will not be a foreclosure crisis this time. So what actually, though, is going to happen with home prices is what most people want to know. And for those that learned something last 9 minutes to help you keep making good decisions, I hope that's what we continue to provide. But for some, they could start right here on just wanting to know, well, then what the heck, Justin, is going to happen with home prices in 2022, 2023, 2024. And as you can see, what we're going to show you is that answer could have been predicted because of the 48-year average monthly price movement is seasonality. This is just the average, is that home prices are always going to appreciate through all of the corrections and crashes. And as you look at, though, the normal price movement, this is as we start looking at typical 1973 to 2021 and 2022, you can see here, look at what happened in 2022. We had a massive amount of monthly appreciation that was completely outside the historical norm, which is why the back half of last year, we saw a correction, which is literally what was required due to the fact that that's what a correction means. We need to fix what happened. And so as we see that, we know going into home prices for 2023, reminding ourselves of that 48-year average monthly price movement is January and February were a little low. And we came out of that dramatic correction on the back half of last year. And now we're seeing home prices appreciate. And again, they are even greater than that seasonal average. So why I keep bringing that up is we can take seasonal context to better understand the housing market in general, to then predict what will most likely happen in the current market using these other indicators around inventory, demand, and most likely what we see based off of the historical context. That is somewhat easy to follow, and is why if people follow the market updates, they continue to advise and help people make good decisions. As you can see here, the main economists and or segments of data that track this, again, they're showing on the back half of this year that there is no projections of any level of depreciation, if anything, very similar to now that overall seasonality on the back half of this year, which is a 0.5 percentage point here, a 0.5 percentage point there. And why? Because we saw those large jumps at the beginning of the year. So now as we start looking at, though, some people might say, oh yeah, well, Justin, I know my friend in blank area, their home prices are still going down. There are some areas and geos that are going to be impacted because they skyrocketed the last 3 years. So this is the percentage of appreciation in the top 20 cities since March 2020. The only one as of last month that is not seeing appreciation in home prices again is Phoenix. And they were like at less than 0.5%. So by next month, I'm pretty confident that they will be up year over year now in price appreciation. And for most people, that is a great thing. And for those segments that's not year over year, it is month over month, which now means they're through the correction. But none of them had to give back any amount in consideration to what they took over the last 3 years in the addition to the home values that they have. Now, as you look at Andy Walden, Vice President of Black Knight, there's no doubt that the housing market has reignited from a home price perspective. Firming prices have now fully erased the pullback we tracked through the last half of 2022 and lifted the seasonally adjusted Black Knight HPI to a new record high in May. As we close out today's market segment, what this is really helping people better understand is the current forecast. When you look at December of 2022, so much misinformation and miscalculation was provided. Could that happen in the future? Of course it could, but most of this is based off of just common trend, and we'll show you some of the trend that's very important to remember. This 48-year average monthly price movement is critical to just remind yourself of where are we at in comparison. And so as you can see, coming into August, September, October, November, December, just being at that 0.5% appreciation month over month is a great number for people to continue to see, because when you compound that, that's the 3 to 6% that is historical for 30 years, because it's very difficult for anybody to afford housing if it continued to appreciate at 10 to 15% each and every year like it had been. So a couple key takeaways is that deceleration of appreciation is not the same thing as home prices are depreciating. So the challenge is when you see headlines say home prices are going down again, that is not accurate. What that means is the rate of appreciation is decelerating, which is actually healthy for anybody who's struggling with affordability. And as we dive into how do we know, though, that the value is going to keep going up is based off of inventory. As you can see, week over week, yes, inventory has increased. But as you look at this same week this time last year, it's down 8%. But if you look at this same week in 2019, we have half the amount of homes available, which is, again, what we are in is a supply-strained market. And until inventory dramatically changes, we are going to continue to see an appropriate demand, because housing still remains the number one long-term investment for so many reasons, not because of market conditions, but because the conditions of what it provides to people's well-being, happiness, and overall living situation. So as you can see from Lawrence Young, there are simply not enough homes for sales. The market can easily absorb a doubling of inventory. So in a seller's market, sellers often think that they don't need an agent because anyone can sell a house during a favorable period. However, it is important to remember that agents don't sell houses. Rather, they facilitate, consult, and protect their clients through the process. This slide is only significant for a very small percentage of the population, maybe 1 out of 10, who don't see the value in a local expert. But the local expert is the one who can guide you through what we're talking about today. It's not just the marketing of a home. So much of it is the knowledge of the market that allows the marketing to either be effective or ineffective, because there's one thing that marketing cannot do, and that is create a market that does not exist. So as we close out today, we'll dive into mortgage rates and some of the interesting perspective of what people are saying. And as you look at the projections towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, as most major economists are predicting that will be in the low 6s to the upper 5s. As you look at why is that, is our inflation numbers continue, as you can see, of July of last year and just throughout, back half of the year, the first half of this year, is that our economy and our market is reporting to still be strong, successful in many areas. And the concern with that is by bringing down interest rates, you are going to see a flood of people come to the market. Sellers, when they start seeing 5%, will start making that decision to sell again. But my question is, as you look at affordability, even those who bought a home during a correction last year in July are still sitting on a 5% interest rate. Some could argue that that was a very smart decision long-term compared to what it would have been like right now to purchase in a market where home prices are going back up. So remember, do not make any market context a singular point on why you make a decision, because you'll never time it right. Spend time learning about it and how you can better predict by working with the local market expert is the right way. And so for most experts in our economy, they're saying that once we get this number around 2%, then we're going to be fine starting to lower these interest rates. So continue to watch both inflation measures as they slowly decrease. And the reason why, to remind some people of what are we doing that for, is because if you follow back to the 70s, when we had the inflation at a historical high, we were able to drop it. But the problem is then once everything adjusted, it skyrocketed back up. And that's the fear that people have right now, is that, yes, we've gotten that inflation number, if you go to the far right of this graph, to start being fixed, but it has not gotten all the way down to that 2-ish% number that we believe is where it will remain for a longer period of time before we have to continue to look at this history and how we will overcome it. So from me to you, to overcome the mistakes that people continue to make when you look at the timing of real estate, is by spending too much time making your decision only off headlines, news, and what other people are doing versus the good decisions you've probably made most of your life, and working with somebody who's an expert in this field to help advise you through this. And as you can see on this final graph here, talking to homeowners makes a difference. Is hopefully these help you, as 65% of other people, when they sit down and do a strategy session, it helps them make a decision on what to do in the next 6 months, which is for most people a joy, because the perspective of waiting is painful. The perspective of making a decision and moving your family and your life forward, whether that be to stay where you are or to continue to do something different, is much more enjoyable. So from me to you, we always enjoy advising, supporting, helping. For anybody who is getting ready for next year and wants to time it more appropriately by getting ahead of it versus waiting for the market to open up to where everybody is involved in it, is it will be a frenzy. And now, between that time of this time next year, may be a great opportunity to make a change. Justin Martin, as always, reach out to me. Love to connect. And if you need help all across the nation, I will connect you with the top 1% of agents nationwide.